Friends, Trevor Hudson tells the following story. He says a man sat across the desk from his doctor and he complained, "Doctor, I have an awful headache. Can you help me get rid of it?" Certainly, answered the doctor. "But I need to ask you a few questions first to help diagnose the problem." "Tell me," said the doctor, "do you drink at all?" "Alcohol," said the man. "I don't touch the filthy stuff." "Do you smoke at all?" "Tobacco is disgusting. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life," he replied. "I'm a bit embarrassed to ask this of you," said the doctor, "but it's important. Do you run around with other women besides your wife?" "Of course I don't, doctor," he replied. "Who do you think I am? I'm in bed every night by 10 at the latest." "Tell me," asked the doctor, "that pain in your head, is it a sharp shooting pain?" "Yes," the man replied, "it's a sharp shooting pain." "Well, I know what's causing it," said the doctor. "Your trouble is that you have your halo on too tight. We're going to need to loosen it up a bit." It's very easy to think of others when we hear that story. Are there people that you can think of who you sometimes think wear their halo just a little too tightly? Hopefully, however, we can also see ourselves in that story. Like Trevor Hudson, I certainly can see myself in that story. Examining the story, it's not so much the answers that the man gives that suggest his halo is too tight. Rather, it would seem the emotion and the defensiveness that are the real problem. Reflecting on that story, Trevor Hudson asks, how often do we give the impression that we are more honest, more caring, more virtuous than we really are? While in theory, we may be willing to admit our faults, often we become very defensive when anyone reminds us of them. A quick test. How did you respond the last time someone pointed out one of your character flaws? Trevor suggests that true humility involves loosening our halos just a bit. That doesn't necessarily mean loosening our behavior and our conduct, although for some who have grown up in a particularly constricted or repressed environment, that actually may be the case. But what it does mean is being less defensive in our responses to others, being more willing and more open to see and admit our weaknesses and character flaws. This requires a certain humility. True humility, Trevor says, involves loosening our halos, about being honest in acknowledging both our strengths and weaknesses, accepting that we can be both saint and sinner, angel and monster. It's about seeing ourselves as we really are. Humility neither exaggerates nor plays down the truth of who we are. It simply accepts the reality that we are fragile, flawed, and fallible human beings. And this is one of the key parts of the 12-step program. In some ways, the 12-step program seems to be a little repetitive, but in a way that's important because each step builds on the next and sometimes requires us to revisit the steps we've already been through. And a key element in all of this in the 12-step program is in helping participants to humbly and honestly look at themselves. Without nurturing this quality of humility, of honesty, it will be very difficult for anyone to find healing from addiction or from any dysfunctional thinking or behavior. Humility is a key quality needed for anyone who wishes to be made well or whole. In the Zen tradition, humility is also known as the beginner's mind. The mind that thinks it is an expert already will never be open to learning anything new. Step 7 explicitly invites us to practice humility. There is nothing like asking for help in helping us to practice humility. To ask for help is to recognize that we don't have all the answers. To ask for help is a recognition of our need for others. It's a recognition that we are not completely independent beings, and that we are not completely self-sufficient. We are part of a network of interdependence. That's how God has made us. And those who are humble are ready and willing to call out for help. Les Brown writes, ask for help, not because you are weak, but because you want to remain strong. Louise Hay says, it's okay to ask for help. I give help to others when they need it, and I ask help from others when I need it. And Katrina Mayer writes, I'm courageous enough to know that I can accomplish great things, but I'm humble enough to know when I need to ask for help. And so in step 7, we are invited to call out to God, the God of our understanding, or our higher power, or perhaps our higher self, if we may struggle with conventional God language. Again, some might choose to ask love with a capital L, to help them, asking humbly for help to remove our shortcomings. Richard Rohr, the American Franciscan priest, who has written extensively on the value of the 12-step program for providing wisdom for all of us, he says the following: we can never engineer or guide our own transformation or conversion. If we try, our so-called conversion will be self-centered, and most of our preferences and addictions will still be fully in place, but now well disguised. And so step 7 says we must humbly ask God, our higher power, to remove our shortcomings. And as Trevor Hudson indicates, this is a watershed moment in the 12 steps, as we actually humble ourselves enough to ask for help and to indicate our desire in no uncertain ways, in no uncertain terms, our desire to continue the journey towards wellness and wholeness. Again, we are reminded by Trevor that this does not mean we will wake up with all our problems solved and with all our character defects removed. But now we are truly on a path on which change can take place. It's a step in which we now become active partners with God or our higher power towards a journey into a new future. We have a heightened awareness now of what our strengths and weaknesses are. And by sharing our wrongs with ourselves, God, and one other human being, by indicating our entire willingness to change, and now in humbly asking, humbling ourselves enough to ask for help, change can truly take place. Even if the journey ahead may still be uneven, up and down, and a rather long-term process, all the groundwork is now in place for change to take place. Trevor shares one final thought on this step. He says that when we ask God or our higher power to remove our character flaws, we also now need to become active participants in replacing them with their opposite qualities. If we battle with selfishness, we can begin to do kind or helpful things for others. If we procrastinate a lot, we can get down to doing something that we've been avoiding for a long time. If we are continually on the defensive, we can discipline ourselves to not always have the last word. As we take action to build positive habits like these into our lives, our journey towards healing with the help of God will become more effective. I end with a prayer that Trevor Hudson refers to at the end of the chapter. The prayer goes like this: "Oh God, I ain't what I could be, and I ain't what I should be, but thanks to you, I ain't what I used to be." Those words summarize what we can expect to happen when we apply step 7 on a regular basis, says Trevor. We may always be flawed, imperfect, in progress and on the way. But when we become humble enough to ask for help from God, from a higher power, sometimes even from other people, God, or the great wisdom that sustains us, can begin changing us one day at a time. Amen. Just a bit of food for thought as we continue this journey on our sermon series, One Day at a Time, 12 Steps for Everyone. God bless. Amen.